The words that shattered my heart didn't come from my husband. They came from his mother. She looked me straight in the eyes, smiled without a trace of kindness, and said, "Leaving you was the best decision my son ever made." For a moment, the entire room went silent. I couldn't breathe. My hand started trembling so badly that I almost dropped the folder I had been holding. Everyone around us pretended not to hear. But then, exactly 5 minutes later, someone walked through that restaurant door. And everything she believed about me, everything my ex-husband believed, was about to fall apart. Before I tell you what happened, let me introduce myself. My name is Elena Brooks. I'm 36 years old, and until 2 years ago, I believed love was something you protected with patience, sacrifice, and forgiveness. Today I live alone in a small apartment outside Portland, rebuilding a life I never imagined I would have to start over. If this story resonates with you, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. When I first met Ethan, I thought I had found the safest place in the world. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't rich. He was simply kind. At least, that's what I believed. We met at a neighborhood bookstore during a rainy Saturday afternoon. I reached for the same novel he wanted. He laughed. "You can have it." I smiled. "No. You grabbed it first." That tiny conversation somehow turned into coffee. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became years. For the first 3 years of our marriage, life wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. We rented a modest townhouse. We argued over whose turn it was to wash dishes. We dreamed about buying a home. We laughed more than we fought. Then Margaret entered our marriage. Officially, she had always been there. She was Ethan's mother. But after his father passed away, she became part of every decision. Every holiday. Every financial choice. Every disagreement. At first I tried to understand. Grief changes people. I reminded myself of that over and over. Whenever she criticized my cooking, "It's a little bland." Whenever she rearranged my kitchen without asking, "I'm just trying to help." Whenever she compared me to Ethan's ex-girlfriend, Rebecca always remembered Ethan's favorite dessert. I smiled. I apologized. I stayed quiet. Because I loved my husband. One evening I finally asked him, "Do you think your mom likes me?" He didn't even look up from his laptop. "That's just how she is." Those 5 words became the answer to everything. She's just like that. She's just trying to help. She doesn't mean it. Don't take it personally. Little by little, I stopped trusting my own feelings. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe. Looking back now, that word almost ruined my life. Things changed the day Ethan lost his job. It wasn't his fault. The company downsized. He was devastated. So I worked longer hours. I accepted extra projects. I canceled vacations. I sold jewelry my grandmother had left me. I never told him. I didn't want him to feel guilty. Instead, I simply said, "We're a team." He hugged me. I'll never forget this. I believed him. Months passed. Finding another job took longer than expected. The bills kept growing. One evening Margaret invited us over for dinner. Halfway through the meal she looked directly at Ethan. "You know, a real wife shouldn't let her husband struggle like this." I frowned. "I'm doing everything I can." She laughed softly. "Are you?" The room became painfully quiet. Ethan didn't defend me. He just stared at his plate. That silence hurt more than her words ever could. Over the next year something invisible started happening. Money disappeared from our joint account. Ethan became secretive. Whenever I asked about expenses, he'd sigh. Why do you always make everything stressful? I started questioning myself again. Maybe I really was overreacting. Maybe marriage was just difficult. Then one afternoon I accidentally found a bank statement tucked inside his briefcase. The account wasn't ours. It had thousands of dollars moving in and out every month. My stomach dropped. That night I asked calmly, "What's this account?" His face changed instantly. "It's none of your business." I blinked. "None of my business? We're married." He grabbed the paper from my hands. "You don't trust me." The conversation somehow became my fault. Again. Weeks later he packed a suitcase. No screaming. No dramatic fight. Just quiet. "I need space." I stood frozen in our hallway. "For how long?" "I don't know." He walked out. The front door closed. And with that sound, 8 years of marriage suddenly echoed inside an empty house. I waited. 1 week. Then 2. Then a month. Eventually divorce papers arrived. No explanation. Just signatures waiting for mine. I thought the hardest day of my life was signing those documents. I was wrong. The hardest day came nearly a year later. A mutual family friend invited me to a charity luncheon. I almost didn't go. Something inside me whispered, "You've hidden long enough." So I put on the blue dress that had been sitting untouched in my closet. I smiled at strangers. I congratulated volunteers. I tried to convince myself I was healing. Then I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Well." I slowly turned around. Margaret. Perfectly dressed. Perfectly composed. Looking at me as if I had never mattered. She walked closer until only a few feet separated us. People nearby continued chatting, unaware of the storm about to begin. She folded her arms. "I heard you're doing fine." "I'm getting there." She smiled. The kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. Then she leaned in just enough for everyone at our table to hear. "Leaving you was the best decision my son ever made." Every conversation around us seemed to disappear. I could feel dozens of eyes shifting toward us. I wanted to respond. I wanted to defend myself. Instead, I simply looked at her. Because something about her confidence felt rehearsed. As if she knew something I didn't. Or believed she did. 5 long minutes passed. Neither of us spoke again. Then the restaurant's front door opened. A sharply dressed woman carrying a thick leather portfolio walked inside. She looked around the room. Locked eyes with me. And then called out my name. "Lena. I've finally found you." Every head turned. Margaret's confident smile vanished. And before anyone could ask a single question, the woman lifted the portfolio onto the table and said, "There's something you deserve to know about what really happened to your marriage." The room fell completely silent. I stared at the woman standing beside our table, trying to remember where I had seen her before. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. Margaret's expression changed instantly. The confidence she had worn only moments earlier faded, replaced by something I had never seen on her face before. Uneasiness. The woman set the leather portfolio on the table and extended her hand toward me. "Elena Brooks?" I nodded. "Yes. My name is Claire Donovan. I'm a forensic accountant." For a second, I thought she had mistaken me for someone else. "A forensic accountant?" She nodded. "I've been trying to reach you for almost 3 weeks." Margaret suddenly interrupted. "I think you've got the wrong person." Claire didn't even look at her. "No, I don't." She opened the portfolio and carefully removed several neatly organized folders. "I apologize for approaching you like this, Elena. I wanted to speak privately, but I recognized you the moment I walked in." My heart was pounding. What is this about? Claire took a slow breath. It concerns the financial records from your former marriage. The words sent a chill through me. Margaret shifted uncomfortably in her chair. I think this conversation is inappropriate. Claire finally turned toward her. Mrs. Collins, you've had plenty of opportunities to explain these records yourself. Margaret's face lost all color. For the first time in years, I saw her speechless. The guests nearby had stopped pretending not to notice. Some quietly stepped away, while others looked on with curiosity. Claire lowered her voice. Elena, may we sit down? I nodded. My hands were shaking. She placed a stack of documents in front of me. I work with a firm that was hired during an audit involving one of Ethan's former employers. I frowned. I don't understand. The audit uncovered several personal financial transactions that weren't related to the company itself. Those transactions led us to accounts connected to your former household. My stomach tightened. She slid one document toward me. Do you recognize this account number? I looked carefully. It was the same hidden account I had found in Ethan's briefcase before our divorce. I've seen it before. Claire nodded. I thought you might have. She opened another folder. This account received regular transfers over a 3-year period. I swallowed hard. From Ethan? Partly. She paused. The majority came from another account. I looked at the paperwork. The account holder's name made my heart stop. Margaret Collins. I slowly raised my eyes. Margaret avoided looking at me. I don't know what any of this means, she said quietly. Claire remained calm. It means thousands of dollars were transferred between family-controlled accounts while Elena believed the household was struggling financially. The words echoed in my mind. All those nights. All those extra shifts. Selling my grandmother's jewelry. Skipping meals so we could pay the mortgage. Had it all been unnecessary? I felt sick. Claire continued gently. We're still investigating every transaction, so I don't want to draw conclusions that aren't supported by evidence. I appreciated her careful words. She wasn't trying to humiliate anyone. She was simply laying out the facts. I turned toward Margaret. Did you know? She hesitated. I was only trying to protect my son. Protect him from what? Silence. The silence said more than any answer could. Just then, another voice interrupted. Mom. Every person at the table turned. Ethan stood near the entrance. He looked exhausted. He had clearly arrived only moments earlier and had heard enough to know something was terribly wrong. His eyes moved from me. To Claire. To the documents. Then finally to his mother. What's happening? Margaret stood quickly. We're leaving. No, Claire replied politely. No one is stopping anyone from leaving. But before you do, Mr. Collins deserves to know why I contacted Ms. Brooks. Ethan looked confused. What are you talking about? Claire handed him one of the statements. He studied it. His face slowly changed. I've never seen this. Margaret immediately answered. Of course you haven't. He looked at her. What does that mean? She clasped her purse tightly. I handled those accounts. You told me they were closed years ago. Claire quietly added, according to the records, they remained active. Ethan looked stunned. He turned toward his mother. You told me Elena was hiding money from us. I felt the air leave my lungs. What? His voice cracked. You said she had another account. You said she didn't trust me. I stared at Margaret. She said nothing. Every painful memory from our marriage rushed back at once. Every accusation. Every argument. Every moment Ethan questioned my honesty. Had they all started with a lie? Ethan slowly looked at me. His eyes filled with regret. I accused you. His voice barely came out. I actually believed. I couldn't answer. For years I had replayed every conversation in my mind, wondering where I had failed. Now I was beginning to realize that perhaps I hadn't failed at all. Perhaps someone had quietly rewritten the truth before either of us had the chance to see it. Claire carefully closed one of the folders. There are still many unanswered questions. That's why I wanted to find you, Elena. I looked at her. What questions? She slid one final envelope across the table. This was discovered in a safe deposit box connected to the investigation. My name was written on the front. In Ethan's handwriting. The handwriting I would have recognized anywhere. I looked up. Ethan stared at the envelope in complete disbelief. I never wrote that. Claire met his eyes. The signature has already been verified. No one spoke. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. Inside was a single folded letter. The first line made my heart stop. My fingers froze around the letter. The restaurant seemed to disappear. The conversations. The clinking glasses. Even the sound of my own breathing faded into the background. All I could see were those first few words. If you're reading this, then someone finally uncovered the truth I was too afraid to tell you. My eyes filled with tears before I had even reached the second sentence. Ethan stepped closer. Lena. His voice was barely above a whisper. I've never seen that letter before. I looked at him. For the first time in almost 2 years, I couldn't tell whether he was telling the truth or trying to convince himself. Claire gently said, "Read it." I unfolded the rest of the page. The handwriting was unmistakably Ethan's. Lena, if this reaches you someday, it means everything I believed has probably fallen apart. I don't know whether you'll ever forgive me, and I don't expect you to. But if I'm wrong about you, if even one thing my mother told me isn't true, then I owe you more than an apology. I owe you the truth. My hands trembled. I continued reading. She kept telling me you were hiding money, that you were planning to leave me, that you only stayed because I was useful. Every time I defended you, she had another document, another story, another reason why I shouldn't trust you. Eventually, I stopped asking questions. I started believing her instead of believing my wife. I couldn't stop crying. Not because the words erased my pain, but because they confirmed something I had spent years wondering. I hadn't imagined the distance growing between us. Someone had been feeding it. Piece by piece. Day by day. Ethan slowly sat down. He looked like a man carrying years of regret all at once. I remember writing something, he admitted quietly. But not this. Claire nodded. Our investigation suggests this letter was never mailed. He looked confused. What do you mean? It appears someone removed it before it could be delivered. Everyone's eyes slowly turned toward Margaret. She immediately shook her head. I don't know anything about that. No one answered. The silence was heavier than any accusation. I looked back at the letter. The day you sold your grandmother's necklace. My heart skipped. Mom told me you secretly kept half the money for yourself. She even showed me a receipt. Now I know that receipt wasn't real. I found another version after cleaning her office. I wanted to ask you about it, but I was ashamed. Ashamed that I had doubted you for so long. The necklace. I remembered every detail. It had been wrapped in blue velvet. My grandmother had worn it on her wedding day. Selling it had broken my heart. But I had done it because I believed we were fighting for our future. I looked at Ethan. You really thought I'd lie about that? He lowered his head. I did. His answer hurt. Not because it was new. Because it was honest. Claire carefully removed another folder. There's something else. I almost laughed. How could there possibly be more? She opened several pages filled with dates. We reconstructed the timeline. She pointed to the first page. The financial transfers began 6 months after Ethan lost his job. I nodded. I remember. Claire continued. During that same period, someone repeatedly transferred money out of Ethan's personal savings. He frowned. I never authorized that. Claire nodded. We know. You know? The signatures don't match. The room became silent again. Margaret gripped her purse tighter. Claire spoke carefully. I'm not here to accuse anyone of a crime. That decision belongs to the proper authorities if necessary. She paused. My responsibility is simply to explain what we found. I appreciated that. She wasn't trying to create a scene. She was uncovering facts. One document at a time. Ethan rubbed his forehead. I don't understand. Claire looked at him. Have you ever wondered why every disagreement between you and Elena somehow began after a conversation with your mother? His face slowly changed. He wasn't remembering one argument. He was remembering dozens. The anniversary dinner. The vacation we canceled. The argument over the mortgage. The accusations about hidden bills. Even the night he packed his suitcase. Every single one. Had started after Margaret had spoken to him alone. I suddenly remembered something. A tiny memory I hadn't thought about in years. One afternoon I had walked into our house earlier than expected. Margaret had been standing beside our filing cabinet. She jumped when she saw me. Oh, she'd laughed. I was just looking for an old family recipe. At the time I believed her. Now. That memory felt completely different. I whispered. The filing cabinet. Claire looked at me. What about it? I think she had access to every financial document we owned. Claire slowly nodded. That would explain several things. Margaret finally stood. Enough. Her voice was shaking. I've listened to enough of this. She reached for her purse. I'm leaving. But Ethan stood before she could walk away. His eyes were filled with tears. No. She looked stunned. Ethan. No. His voice was firmer now. For years. I trusted every word you said. She reached for his arm. I was protecting you. He stepped back. From my wife? You couldn't see what she was. He looked directly at her. No. His voice cracked. I couldn't see what you were doing. Those words seemed to break something inside her. She sat back down without saying another word. I looked out the restaurant window. Rain had started falling. It reminded me of the day Ethan and I met in that bookstore. Funny how life circles back to places you thought you'd left behind forever. I wasn't thinking about reconciliation. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about peace. For 2 years I had blamed myself. I had replayed every mistake. Every conversation. Every tear. Now I realized something. Not every broken relationship is destroyed by the 2 people inside it. Sometimes. Silence. Manipulation. And unchecked influence slowly pull it apart from the outside. That realization didn't erase my pain. But it lifted a burden I had carried alone for far too long. If you're enjoying this story, like and subscribe because it truly helps. And if you've ever had to rebuild your life after discovering a painful truth, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your story may encourage someone else who needs hope today. Just as Claire began organizing the documents back into her portfolio, her phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen. Her expression changed immediately. She looked at me. Then at Ethan. I wasn't expecting this today. What is it? I asked. Claire slowly pulled a small sealed envelope from her briefcase. It arrived at my office this morning. There was no return address. Only 500 words on the front. For Elena Brooks. Open carefully. Claire looked at me gravely. I think, before anyone makes another decision about the future. She slid the envelope across the table. You need to know who sent this. For a long moment, no one moved. The small envelope rested on the table between us like it carried the weight of every unanswered question from the last 2 years. My name was written across the front in neat handwriting. Not Ethan's. Not Margaret's. Someone else's. I looked at Claire. Do you know who sent it? She shook her head. It arrived by certified mail this morning. There was no return address, only instructions that it be delivered directly to you. Ethan stared at the envelope. Lena, you don't have to open it here. I looked around the room. A few people were still watching from a distance, pretending to continue their conversations while clearly wondering what was unfolding. I took a slow breath. No. I carefully picked up the envelope. I've spent too many years waiting for answers. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten note and a small flash drive. The note contained only one sentence. The truth isn't in the money. It's in the recordings. A cold shiver ran through me. The recordings? I whispered. Claire's eyes widened. I had no idea there would be digital evidence. Ethan looked confused. What recordings? No one had an answer. Claire turned the flash drive over in her hand. My office has a secure conference room just a few blocks from here. If these files contain sensitive information, that's the safest place to review them. Within 15 minutes, the 4 of us were sitting around a conference table. The room was quiet except for the hum of a computer. Claire inserted the flash drive. A single folder appeared. Its title was simple. Family Conversations. There were 12 audio files. Each one had a date. The earliest recording was from nearly 3 years earlier. Claire hesitated. Ready? I wasn't. But I nodded anyway. She clicked the first file. Static filled the speakers. Then 2 familiar voices emerged. Margaret. And Ethan. Neither of them knew they were being recorded. I don't think Lena would ever hide money from me, Ethan said in the recording. Margaret sighed dramatically. You're too trusting. I love my wife. So did your father trust people who disappointed him? There was a long silence. Then Margaret continued. If you don't start protecting yourself now, she'll leave you with nothing. The recording ended. No one spoke. I looked at Ethan. His face had gone pale. I remember that conversation, he whispered. I'd forgotten it until now. Claire opened the next recording. This one was even harder to hear. Margaret's voice was calm. Confident. Almost persuasive. Don't tell Elena about the investment account. Why not? Ethan asked. Because she'll pressure you to spend it. She wouldn't do that. You always defend her. You'll understand one day. The file stopped. Ethan closed his eyes. I can't believe I let these conversations shape the way I saw my own marriage. We listened to several more recordings. None of them contained shouting. None contained dramatic threats. Instead, they revealed something far more subtle. Small doubts. Carefully planted. Repeated over months. Every conversation nudged Ethan a little further from trusting me. Every suggestion sounded reasonable on its own. But together, they slowly built a story that wasn't true. I finally understood why everything had unraveled so gradually. It hadn't happened in a single argument. It had happened one conversation at a time. Then Claire clicked the final recording. The date caught my attention immediately. It was recorded the day before Ethan moved out. A third voice joined the conversation. I froze. I know that voice. Claire looked at me. You recognize it? I nodded slowly. It belongs to Daniel. Daniel had been Ethan's closest friend since college. He had been the one who comforted both of us during the separation. He had told me, sometimes people just grow apart. He had told Ethan, you have to do what's best for yourself. I had trusted him completely. The recording began. Daniel spoke first. Ethan, are you sure you're making the right decision? I don't know anymore. Margaret answered before Ethan could continue. You'll thank yourself later. Then Daniel said something that made my heart sink. I'll keep Elena distracted tomorrow. She won't suspect anything. The room fell silent. I couldn't breathe. Daniel knew. He had known all along. He hadn't tried to save our marriage. He had helped hide the truth. Ethan stood abruptly. No. His voice cracked. Daniel would never. Claire paused the recording. We haven't heard the rest yet. She pressed play again. Daniel continued. I hate lying to her. Margaret replied firmly. Sometimes protecting family requires difficult choices. Daniel sighed. I just hope one day she'll understand. The recording ended. I leaned back in my chair, overwhelmed. I wasn't angry. I was exhausted. For years I had searched for one reason my marriage had ended. Instead, I had discovered an entire chain of choices, misunderstandings, and misplaced loyalty. Claire carefully removed the flash drive. I'll make certified copies of these files for everyone involved. Ethan looked at me, his eyes filled with regret. I don't know if there's any way to make this right. I met his gaze. There isn't a way to erase the past. He nodded slowly. I know. For the first time since our divorce, we weren't arguing. We weren't blaming each other. We were simply facing the same painful truth. As we prepared to leave, Claire's phone rang again. She answered quietly, then looked surprised. Really? She listened for another moment before ending the call. What happened? I asked. She looked directly at me. That package wasn't anonymous after all. It wasn't? She shook her head. The sender has just agreed to identify themselves. My heartbeat quickened. Who is it? Claire took a slow breath. It was someone who worked in your neighborhood years ago. I frowned. I don't understand. She continued. They said they've been carrying a secret for almost 3 years. My pulse raced. What secret? Claire looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and hope. They claim they witnessed something the day Ethan left your home. She paused. And what they saw changes everything we thought we knew about your final goodbye.